Great, thank you very much. Welcome everybody to the 2021 Budget Committee. I'm going to check that, first of all, I know there are no regrets. We had everybody on the call here from the committee. I'm going to ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest. I don't see any hands raising, so I'll take that as there being none. Today, there are no consent items. However, we do have a significant discussion item, which is the 2021 operating and capital budget overview. We also have the 2021 rates and fees. I'm going to suggest that while we have some discussion of that as part of the overview, that we refer that item for consideration to the future budget meeting, where we'll consider a recommendation to council that would cover everything, including the rates and fees. So I'm going to pass the discussion and the presentation over to Jane Closey, who's going to lead us off, I understand, and then pass the material over to Catherine Hewitson, who's going to go through the more detailed presentation. I understand that all of you should have received a copy of the presentation electronically already if you want to follow along, but we'll take questions and comments for staff after the presentation. Thank you very much, Jane, and go ahead. We cannot hear you.
Am I good now? Yes. You can hear me now? Okay. So, Chair Adams and members of the Budget Committee, as we move into the deliberations of the 2021 budget, the pandemic of 2020 has not yet left us. It has consumed many of the town resources throughout 2020, and unfortunately the same is going to be true for at least the first half of 2021. We have estimated the impact of COVID in 2021 to be $17 million. The budget presented to you today and the balance of the week, Thursday is the second meeting. We have shown that we've mitigated that impact with all but $3.4 million, which will be offset by reserves. Catherine Hewitson, our Manager of Financial Planning and Policy, will provide you the details and the means by which we've mitigated that $17 million cost in order to bring the budget in at an inflationary rate of 1.7 to the taxpayer when you consider the blended rate. The impact of COVID on the community and businesses has certainly been significant. And while the town staff have pivoted quite well in continuing to deliver services, it has meant that many of the 2020 projects have not been completed. And while and many of those projects are actually time sensitive, so it means that they've shifted into the 2021 timeframe as well as the demands of 2021. In addition, we find the province is continuing to move forward with changes that impact the town. And while the conclusion of Bill 108, which was the bill that dealt with the parkland and the community benefit charges and development charges, while it concluded this fall, and it was generally good news, the impact of those changes have placed a significant impact to the town's resources in terms of taking advantage of the elements that we got out of Bill 108. And yet at the same time, it appears that the province is continuing to move forward with their agenda, especially as we consider the elements that were included in the budget material, which Council actually dealt with last night at your Council meeting. So staying close to the priorities in 2020 will be important as we continue to balance the issues of COVID, which will not have left us. Move forward with those time-limited projects that have been deferred into 2021, as well as catching up with the 2021 projects, and staying current with all the changes with the province is going to be important as we move forward. So town staff are looking forward to actually the refresh of the strategic plan so that those priorities we can confirm as we move forward into 2021 and into 22. And speaking of the strategic plan, you will see in the budget books an emphasis on aligning or demonstrating the alignment of the 2021 business strategic initiatives with the council's strategic goals and objectives. We've been looking to, we actually will be looking to improve that alignment, the demonstration of alignment through future budget years, but you will see in the executive summary quite a shift in the way that is presented. We've also pulled out specific areas that demonstrate the total funding in one particular area. It has been difficult in prior years to understand, and I'll use the example of active transportation, to really understand what is the full benefit we provide in terms of resourcing to that, because it's scattered throughout the budget in various different programs. So we've highlighted some of those in the budget book as well. And finally, each year, town staff review our service delivery to enhance the customer experience, streamline our delivery, and achieve efficiencies. So this has been an ongoing initiative, and you'll see from Catherine's presentation a summary of that. You will also see from each one of the presentations throughout Thursday, excuse me, the details of those improvements that have resulted from those ongoing reviews. In addition, I would note that the efficiencies have given us the opportunity to shift some of those resources that we've freed up in those areas to fill gaps in other areas and to address some areas of emphasis that we've needed to for some time. So the areas that we have shifted to is to better enable us to deal with mobility, which will be a challenging issue as we move forward, as well as the management of our assets and really getting the asset management component well understood so that we can fully understand the life cycle costs going forward, better managing budgets in the future. And that would be through the establishment of a new commission, the Community Infrastructure, which you will see take shape in February. In addition, we've enhanced our ability to manage our buildings, better able to achieve our climate change objectives, and to achieve some efficiencies by consolidating the management of all our buildings into one department, Facilities Construction Management Department. And lastly, we've enhanced our ability to deliver online services, to deliver that consistent customer experience, no matter what service they're coming into the town to receive, through the temporary establishment of a Strategic Initiatives Department. So while the budget will be presented by each of the existing commissioners, you will see those programs delivered under 4 commissions in 2021. So now I'll ask Catherine Hewitson to present the overview of the 2021 budget. She'll be followed up by Dorothy St. George, our Director of Strategy, Policy and Communication on the CAO's budget. And then on Thursday, you will hear from Nancy Sully, Commissioner of Corporate Services, Jim Barry, our Acting Commissioner of Community Development, and finally Colleen Ballon, Commissioner of Community Services. So I will turn it over to Catherine at this point.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the annual budget development begins with an internal staff review where program budgets are adjusted to ensure they are in line with average spending and revenue levels. Executive management team then evaluates the budget from a corporate perspective to ensure it is in line with Council's guideline of inflation and continues to build on the strategic objectives. Today marks the beginning of the Budget Committee review of the 2021 proposed budget. Today's presentation provides an overview of the 2021 operating and capital budget and a brief overview of the rates and fees included in today's agenda. The budget document will be distributed to Council through Diligent at the end of this meeting and will be made available on oakville.ca to the public. Council can arrange for print copies of the book through the Clerk's Department. and the remainder of the Budget Committee meetings have been posted on this slide. Notice of the meeting dates have been published in the Oakville Beaver and are posted on oakville.ca. The 2019 to 2022 strategic plan is the essential driver of the town's annual business planning process. Council's strategic goals are incorporated into the annual program business plans and budgets. In order to demonstrate a clear link to the strategic plan, this year's budget document has been reformatted with the town programs organized into the 5 key focus areas. For operating budget purposes, a high-level approach was taken to grouping the programs into categories. And while the programs may have specific initiatives or projects that support several of the key focus areas, each program has been categorized into one focus area that fits the primary goal. A similar approach has been taken for the capital budget, with the exception that all stormwater and flooding projects, Green Fleet Initiative, and energy management projects have been categorized under the environment category, rather than where the program generally fits. For example, transit primarily fits under the mobility category. However, the electric bus purchases have been categorized as environment. Based on the above categorization, the town's investment into programs and services can be summarized into the 5 key focus areas to demonstrate the total gross operating and capital investment for each. The total gross across all categories is $349.1 million, with the largest investment in mobility at $107.7 million, representing 31% of the total. Livability, community engagement, and environment all have a similar share with about 19 to 20% each. Accountable government has the smallest share with 9%. The budget book has also been organized to demonstrate the key priorities and strategic initiatives by the 5 key focus areas. The executive summary has highlighted several strategic initiatives, and each business plan has aligned their 2021 key priorities into these categories. Commissioners will speak to specific initiatives for each program area in their presentation on Thursday. So Council has given a guideline that the 2021 budget be prepared, keeping an overall property tax increase in line with inflation. Based on Bank of Canada's inflation forecast, a target of 1.7% has been set to meet Council's guideline. Now, the town represents one portion of the overall tax increase, so in order to achieve an overall increase of 1.7%, the town's portion was set at 2.31%. This assumes that the region increase stays at 2% and education remains at 0. The 2021 budget presented today meets Council's guideline of an overall increase of inflation of 1.7% and ensures that programs and services valued by our residents and the town's strong financial position are maintained. The 2021 proposed budget represents a public investment of $429 million to provide the desired programs and services and infrastructure to the residents of Oakville, while advancing Council strategic priorities and values. When offset by user fees, internal recoveries, and other revenues, the net property tax levy requirement is $214.8 million. The table above shows how $100 in tax levy dollars is spent on specific town services. The largest share of the tax dollar is spent on infrastructure renewal, followed by emergency services, Oakville Transit, and road network services. During 2020, a number of reports were referred to the Budget Committee. These reports, along with a few other informational reports, have been included on the November 19th agenda. Commissioners will address these reports in their presentations. So now I'll go into a little more detail on the operating budget. Over the past several months, detailed work has been completed to review previous year's spending and revenue trends and adjust budgets where necessary to bring them in line with actuals. As a result, there are several pressures that had to be accommodated within the proposed budget. Personnel increases to include negotiated labor contracts and step progression, and inflationary increases to other materials, supplies, and contracted services. Annualized operating costs of new Fire Station 8 and Oakville Trafalgar Community Center, both which opened earlier this year. Costs related to growth for new infrastructure assumed through subdivisions or the town's capital program. And finally, pressures associated with the COVID-19 pandemic are expected to have a significant impact on the overall budget. Inflationary increases and adjustments reflect changes to the existing base that provides for the same level of service as in 2020. Increases are driven by the rising cost of materials and supplies, contracted and other purchase services, as well as labor costs. Changes in revenue from user fees and all other sources are also incorporated as a means to help keep the tax levy down. The primary driver of the 2021 inflation increase are personnel costs of about $4 million, which have been offset by base budget increase to user fees to reflect higher volumes in development applications. Overall, inflation and adjustments account for $3 million of the increase, or 1.5% to the tax levy. Capital and growth impacts total $3.4 million and include the cost to annualize expenses of the new Fire Station 8 and Oakville Trafalgar Community Center for the full year. Other capital impacts include the cost of maintaining new neighborhood parks, village squares and trails, software support for new technology solutions, transit digital improvements, and operation and replacement of additional fleet equipment. Growth impacts include new positions to support increased volumes in development applications and the cost to provide road maintenance, hydro for streetlights, tree maintenance, and other costs related to the assumption of new subdivisions. In 2017, a financial practice was implemented to align the increase in assessment growth recognized in the budget with the growth impacts of the current year. As a result, deferred assessment funds have been transferred to reserve to be used in future years when growth budgetary pressures are higher than average. In 2021, a transfer from this reserve of $1.2 million has been budgeted to offset the growth impacts. After this transfer, the net impact of growth and capital is $2.2 million, or 1.06% to the tax levy. Developing the 2021 budget has proven to be quite challenging this year, as operating conditions under the pandemic are continually changing. Therefore, staff determined the best course of action was to document the assumptions used so that as the year progresses, we can measure the actuals against these assumptions to be able to report back to council through the coming year. Based on conditions at the time the budget was prepared, a total estimated impact of COVID-19 is $17 million. Revenue impacts total $15.8 million and reflect modified operations of various programs and services, and reduced capacity limits will be in place for the first half of the year and gradually improve in the latter half. Other COVID-related costs associated with enhanced enforcement services, janitorial, and other safety-related costs are estimated at $1.2 million. In order to help offset the impacts related to the pandemic, a total of $10.1 million in one-time budget reductions has been incorporated into the 2021 budget. Council approved a motion to waive the annual 1% increase to the capital levy for the 2021 budget, which represents $2 million in savings. In addition, over the past several months, mitigation measures have been incorporated in all programs, in particular those most affected by the pandemic, resulting in revenue shortfalls. These mitigation measures are considered to be temporary in nature and have been incorporated back into the 2022 forecasted budget. The majority of the budget mitigation can be attributed to reductions in part-time hours, external performer fees, and other program-related materials and contracted services directly related to those impacted areas. As a result of these one-time budget reductions, the total net impact of COVID-19 is $6.9 million, which represents a 3.3% increase to the tax levy. The corporate leadership plan was developed a couple of years ago to support continuous improvement, innovation, and sustainability to help mitigate the impact of ongoing as well as future impacts. Several service reviews have been underway and savings identified in 2021 as well as in future years. Total savings of $1.1 million have been incorporated into the budget across various program areas to reflect reductions in utilities, facility repair and maintenance costs, fleet maintenance costs, mileage, and efficiencies associated with new service delivery methods. In addition, tax stabilization funding has been incorporated into the 2021 budget to reflect the future savings that have been identified. These savings will be realized as the implementations of these reviews continues to unfold over 2022 and 2023. So overall, the total tax levy increase in 2021 is $7.5 million. The largest program increases are seen in transit with $4 million and recreation and culture services at $3.3 million. This is a reflection of the anticipated continued impacts of COVID-19 on user fee revenues for these two program areas. While temporary cost containment measures have been incorporated, due to the capacity restrictions and program limitations, the decrease in revenue are expected to exceed these mitigation efforts. Emergency services is the third largest increase at $1.6 million, which reflects the annualized cost to operate the new Fire Station 8 that opened this year. The $1 million reduction in community development represents the increase in development-related revenues due to the release of the allocation earlier this year. And finally, in order to bring the budget in line with the inflationary guideline, tax stabilization funding in the amount of $3.4 million has been used as an interim measure to offset the COVID-19 impacts corporately. While it's anticipated that additional government support will be available, it is not known at this time. This transfer, along with the $1.2 million in deferred assessment growth, reflects the $5.2 million reduction in corporate revenue and expenses. So the total gross expenditures proposed in the 2021 operating budget totals $348.3 million, which is required to run the town's programs and services and provide funding for infrastructure renewal. Overall, the 2021 expenditures have increased by $2.7 million to include service adjustments for town programs. Salary and benefits accounts for 48%, or $167 million of the total operating budget. This is an increase of $4.4 million over 2020 as a result of anticipated wage and benefit costs, movement through salary grids, and the cost of new positions required as a result of growth. Minor capital and transfers to reserve include the capital levy funding and other provisions for future capital replacement and account for 24% of the total expenditures. In order to help offset COVID impacts, Council waived the annual 1% increase to the capital levy funding in 2021, which represented a $2 million savings. The following chart provides a breakdown of the total funding sources. Taxation revenues provide 62% of the funding and represents the largest revenue source. Fees and charges are the next largest source of funding at $65.7 million, or 19%. Revenue adjustments to reflect the continued impact of the pandemic have been incorporated, resulting in a decrease in revenues when compared to prior years. And as mentioned earlier, in order to offset the COVID impacts, a transfer of $3.4 million from the Tax Stabilization Reserve has been budgeted. All other revenue sources have remained constant. The GFOA recommended target for stabilization reserves is 17% of town-owned source revenue. As a result of receiving the $6.9 million in SAFE Restart funding this year, it is anticipated the town will not need to use any tax stabilization funding in 2020, which helps to maintain a healthy balance in the reserve. With the $3.4 million budgeted in 2021, the tax stabilization reserve balance is still expected to exceed that 17% target. So in review, the base budget represents a 1.95% increase for town programs, and the COVID impacts 3.32%. When offset by tax stabilization funding and assessment growth, the total 21 budget represents a 2.31% increase for the town's portion of the overall tax bill. As you know, the town budget represents approximately 4.13% of the total property tax bill. Therefore, the proposed increase equates to a 0.95% increase on the total property tax bill, or $6.76 per 100,000 of assessment. When combined with the projected increase for the region of 2%, and assuming no increase for education, the total proposed property tax increase is 1.7%, or $12.03 per 100,000 of assessment. Forecasting beyond 2021 provides to be quite difficult, as there are many uncertainties in the coming years. Currently, the forecasts for 2022 and 2023 incorporate inflation and increased operating costs resulting from growth in capital projects forecasted to be completed in 2021 and 2022. In addition, the 2022 budget includes the temporary budget reductions from 2021 added back in, as well as it estimates the majority of revenues will return to normal level. It is anticipated, however, that transit and recreation revenue may still be impacted in the first quarter of 2022. Staff continue to use a guideline of overall budget in line with inflation. So this chart summarizes the overall tax impact for 2022 and 2023. When combined with the region and education, the net overall increase is projected to be at 1.7% for 2022 and 2% for 2023. Now I'll move on to the 2021 capital budget. So in order to improve cash flows, approximately $71 million in capital projects were deferred in 2020. These projects were the starting point for the 2021 capital budget submission. And staff was directed to consider the highest priority needs, staff capacity to manage and complete projects within a timely fashion, and identify opportunities to reduce funding in areas where significant progress has been made in achieving desired service levels. The majority of the deferred projects have been incorporated into the 2021 budget, along with some other key priorities. The total 2021 capital budget is $81.1 million and continues to implement objectives set out in the various master plans and strategic goals while maintaining fiscal sustainability. The infrastructure planning program has the largest capital budget, totaling $28.7 million, and includes project funding for roads and bridge improvements, active transportation, storm sewer improvements, and traffic improvements. The second largest capital program is transit with 16.8 million, or 21%. This includes the projects submitted for the ISIP grant, which will begin the conversion to battery electric buses, as well as technology to improve the customer experience. The next largest component is parks and open spaces with 13.5 million, and represents costs to deliver new parks and trails in North Oakville, as well as renewal of existing parks. Also included are projects to preserve the tree canopy, such as the EAB program and invasive species programs. Facilities and construction management undertake the major infrastructure renewal needs for facilities town-wide, while vehicle and equipment replacement and minor facility repairs and rehab are budgeted within each program area. Information Technology Solutions manages the town's corporate-wide systems and network infrastructure, as well as supports ongoing upgrades to program-specific software. The capital budget is categorized into 4 project drivers. In 2021, infrastructure renewal represents the largest portion at 58%, with 47.2 million, and ensures that the existing infrastructure remains in a good state of repair. This is a reflection that the priority was given to the highest infrastructure needs. The growth portion totals 19.1 million, or 24%, as it is important that new infrastructure is in place to maintain current levels of service for its residents. Strategic priorities total 12.3 million, which are projects that have been initiated by staff in order to achieve the goals set out in Council's strategic plan or have been identified in master plans. And finally, enterprise initiatives with 2.6 million are required to support ongoing initiatives in the town's self-supporting programs, building, harbors, cemetery, and parking. Above are a few highlights of the capital program and demonstrate how the budget continues to advance Council's strategic objectives. Also included in the 2021 budget is funding to prepare projects to be in a shovel-ready state in anticipation of provincial and federal stimulus grant opportunities. Projects have been identified to meet a range of grant opportunities such as resilience, social infrastructure, transportation, and green infrastructure. Financing of the 2021 capital budget is provided by several different funding sources. The capital levy represents the largest share at 44% and is the primary source of funding for infrastructure renewal projects, and also allows capital work to be completed without the issuance of debt. The second largest funding source is development charges, which is used to finance growth projects, with 14.5 million, or 18%. Grants and external revenue make up a larger share in 2021, with 11 million, and include the ISIP grant funding received for transit initiatives. Other town funding sources include the capital reserve, equipment reserves, and building maintenance reserves, and gas tax funding totals 6.7 million and has been used to fund larger infrastructure projects such as road rehabilitations and storm water improvements that meet the eligibility requirements. So just a few comments on the rates and fees. Each year, as part of the annual budget process, rates and fees are reviewed by departments to ensure they reflect the cost of delivering services. Earlier this year, Council approved a recommendation that rates and fees be tied to inflation, and as a result, all fees have been increased by 1.7%. The fees were posted on the town web to allow public time to review them. As well, notice was placed in the Oakville Beaver advertising today's meeting. While most of the increases will take effect on January 1st, some will take place later in the year. The effective date is shown in the fee schedule. These fees are included as part of today's agenda and will be included as part of the Budget Committee deliberations on December the 15th. So next steps. So as CAO Closey mentioned, Dorothy will follow my presentation with an update on the CAO office and the 2021 budget included for that. Then additional commission presentations have been scheduled for Thursday, November 19th, which will be followed by public delegations and budget deliberation meetings. Final council approval is scheduled for December 21st. And finally, there are many ways for the public to take part in the budget process. All budget information distributed today will be on the town website later this afternoon. Residents can provide input through the budget@oakville.ca email or by making delegations to any one of the budget committee meetings. In addition, the budget chair will be hosting a virtual budget open house on November the 25th. So that concludes my presentation and overview of the 2021 budget. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for the presentation. I suspect that there will be questions, but I wonder if maybe committee members would like to delay their questions until we've seen the first set of presentations. I just wanted to double check with you that you're comfortable with us referring the 2021 rates and fees item to the December 15th budget meeting so that we can consider it in its entirety.
Yeah, I believe we're fine with that.
Great. Okay, then let's proceed, and then we'll do questions at the end when we've seen all the material.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. The budget book is hot off the press, as you know, and you've not yet had the opportunity to review the details. So we're going to dive into the details with one of the smaller program areas, and that is the CAO's office. The budget for the CAO's office comprises 4 program areas: the Administrative Executive Management, Economic Development, Strategic Policy and Communications, and Service Oakville. This pie chart shows the gross operating budget of $7.39 million compared to the net operating budget of $6.06 million. So the program areas are primarily senior management and corporate support, which are mainly tax supported. So the gross and net operating budgets are quite similar. The net budget for admin executive management reflects service efficiencies, so you'll see that percentage has declined in the net operating budget. As well, economic development reflects the MAT revenue, the municipal accommodation tax revenue, and so it as well reflects a reduction in the net operating budget. So you can see from the last chart, the operating budget of $6.1 million is shown. And this chart actually divides the budget into the council's strategic focus areas. So if you look at the graphic on your left, community engagement would include Service Oakville, communications, and climate action. The executive administration group would be under accountable government, and livability reflects economic development in council's strategic plan. The capital budget is also divided into the various strategic areas, a total of $1.9 million, and I'll get into details about the projects included in the capital budget towards the end of my presentation. got a couple of slides on the 2020 accomplishments for these program areas. In 2020, the COVID response was evident in all program areas. Communications especially. They were providing timely updates, both internally and externally, for communications in a very fluid situation. With respect to Service Oakville, there were 10 new services for customers added to access online. That included barking dog complaints, construction noise, fireworks noise, construction dust, noise from events and parties, long grass, splash pad concerns, graffiti, traffic speed, and intersection congestion. The Service Oakville team also worked with various departments to launch and support online services for certified tax statements, to request property surveys, submit an electronic permit or application, as well as providing a loose leaf collection map. For the website, oakville.ca, fresh content was added and many of the recommendations from Phase 1 implemented, as well as accessibility improvements in preparation for moving into Phase 2 of the website refresh. The inclusion lens is being rolled out, so a lot of work has been done, and you'll be getting a report in January regarding diversity and inclusion. The inclusion lens is being rolled out to staff, which is part of the ongoing work in this area, and it includes communications and checklist on how we deliver our programs and services and undertake hiring processes. For economic development, the mitigation plan for the Lakeshore Road reconstruction project was completed, and that provided assistance to some of the businesses impacted by the construction project, including free parking, digital Main Street, patio program, a dedicated liaison with businesses, and signage. In response to the COVID pandemic, the mayor created an economic task force, and that was a collaborative effort with the Chamber, BIAs, Visit Oakville, and Economic Development, providing advocacy for government programs, a Welcome Back Oakville marketing campaign, patio program, digital Main Street assistance, information on government programs, and a survey of the business community, as well as consultation with medium and larger businesses. The DMS program, or Digital Main Street Squad, assisted over 230 businesses through one-on-one assistance and webinars. And they've also had 60 businesses apply for and receive a digital transformation grant that's going to help them well beyond the COVID situation. Next week, we'll be hosting a virtual auto mayors meeting with mayors and approximately 100 industry and government stakeholders across the province to look at the future of the industry and how communities need to adapt. With regard to the executive management team, COVID really has been top of mind, and there has been an ongoing response to an ever-changing situation, anticipating provincial announcements, and having plans in place to adapt quickly to new orders. With regard to environment, staff has supported the implementation of the Future Energy Oakville Centre, and will continue to provide staff to that organization in helping to implement the community energy strategy. They also completed the Showcase Cities pilot project, which provided a technical report and development of 2020 local climate projections. And that will be rolled out through departments through a climate lens tool, and it will look at how we integrate climate risks and into our projects through asset management and emergency management. These are some of the key KPIs that were pulled out from the budget book. There wasn't a citizen survey done this year, so if we're looking at the percentage of citizens surveyed that are satisfied with the town programs, for 2020, you'll see the same KPI as 2019. The overall tax rate increase, as you can see through the trend here from 2016 to 2020, has been in line with inflation. For Service Oakville, we looked at the percentage of calls answered within 30 seconds. You'll see a slight decline in 2020. And while the team at Service Oakville was really keeping pace with the call volumes that were coming in, they had an extraordinary high volume in July and August this year. And so there was a slight decline in that service level. The target for it is 80% of the calls to be answered within 30 seconds. Unique visitors on the Oakville website, you'll see those numbers keep increasing. There was a special COVID page provided this year on both the main town website as well as Invest Oakville, providing updated information regarding the pandemic. For climate action, the town has, we have a couple of KPIs shown here. We have a conservation demand management program that set a target for 24% reduction in greenhouse gas emission by 2021, not including fleet or transit. In 2019, you can see the number of 7,438 CO2 equivalent reflects a reduction of 20.5%, so we're well on pace to reach the target of 24% by 2021. Similarly, the KPI for corporate energy use had a target of 17.5% reduction by 2021, and in 2019 achieved a 16% reduction in equivalent kilowatt hours, and which is a standard measure of energy consumption for gas and electricity. And those were achieved by a number of measures, including some retrofits and automation of some of the energy uses. So turning over to economic development, you can see some of the numbers for industrial and commercial development. In 2019, we had an unusually high industrial development, which reflected some self-storage units. For commercial development, 2020 saw the Virox expansion, which allowed for a response from that company to provide supplies for the pandemic. There were also a new building for Habitat and new industrial buildings in the Melrose Business Park. The last KPI here shows the number of businesses per 100,000 population. And if you look at the numbers between 2019 and 2020, you'll see decline. The number of businesses actually from Stats Canada remained the same between those 2 years. But with the population growing, you'll see the overall decline shown here. Stats Canada did caution us, however, that we should not be looking at these numbers as indicative of the impact from COVID. Those numbers have yet to be calculated or to see the full impact in businesses as we go forward. I have a couple of slides here for 2021 initiatives. Under livability, we have economic development. We'll continue with the implementation of the 5-year economic development strategy, which includes lead servicing, corporate calling, marketing, research, auto mayors initiatives, as well as a liaison for a major commercial filming production that's taking place next year. Economic development will continue to work with the Chamber of Commerce and the BIAs and other businesses to provide response for businesses throughout the COVID pandemic. And one of the things we're actually doing right now is making sure that people are aware of all the government programs that are out there to help businesses. There have been new ones added, and I think sometimes businesses get a little bit frustrated or don't have time to sift through some of that information. And there is a lot of support being provided, particularly at provincial and federal levels, and we want to make sure that our businesses are taking advantage of those programs. You will be getting, or council will be getting a report on diversity and inclusion in January next year, what has been done across various departments, information about the Halton Charter, demographic information, and how we're proceeding with next steps to develop a full diversity and inclusion plan for Oakville. With the online strategy, that's really going to be coordinated through the Strategic Initiatives Department and provide really an overarching framework with the various online strategies that are being done. We will continue with the refresh of the Oakville.ca website, and that's moving into the first part of phase 2 for that refresh, and that includes much of the work on updating the content and making sure we are in alignment with the accessibility standards that need to be done. A governance framework needs to be developed as well as various development of the site. We continue to implement effective communications plans, and in particular, internal and external communications regarding the pandemic. There are a number of initiatives shown here under accountable government. This relates to the executive leadership team, which is providing the overall management of the town's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Leadership is also provided for capital projects and strategic initiatives. The update of the council strategic plan will be done in consultation with council next year. Annual operating budgets and capital budgets will be completed. And there will be development of an overarching service review and implementation plan. And that's taking a look at all of the service reviews that are underway and making sure they are aligned and in accordance with key priorities. And as a reminder, there are current service reviews being done in the areas of facility management, fleet services, planning, and recreation registration. And you will hear more about those service reviews in the commission presentations on Thursday. Under the environment category, staff will continue to support the future Oakville, and forget the name, the implementation office for the community energy strategy. And the incorporation will be complete by the end of 2020, but staff will continue to provide that support. A full report on the status of that office will be going to council in Q1 2021. Climate action staff will also be working with planning, parks, and asset management staff on climate change initiatives in 2021 and looking at implementing some of the initiatives and providing an overall framework for measurement and reporting of climate action initiatives. And there will also be support for the implementation of the Oakville strategy for biodiversity, which I'll get into a little bit under the capital projects. This chart takes the operating budget and splits it by the program areas. And you can see the differences between 2021 and 2020. And we'll get into a little bit more of the details as I put the chart up with the numbers. Okay, there's a lot of numbers on this chart. And if you look at the area highlighted in yellow, there's for the 4 program areas there in 2020, the restated budget is $5.7 million. The requested budget for 2021 is $6.1 million. Those are the 2 areas I want to look at. In between, you'll see some of the areas where the changes occur. So under the executive management area, there is in 2021, an increase of about $500,000. And that's related to the creation of the new Community Infrastructure Commission and the addition of a policy advisor for the CAO. That money is offset by budget efficiencies of $0.6 million in the tax stabilization funding that's been incorporated into commission budgets to recognize future savings as service reviews continue to unfold in 2022 and 2023. And the portion here, while Catherine mentioned some of the budget efficiencies, the portion of $0.6 million that's shown here is the portion of those total budget efficiencies related to the CAO's office. Also on this chart, you'll see under 2021, an increase of about $400,000 under strategy, policy, and communications. And that increase reflects the reallocation of personnel to support this division. Overall, the cost of the reorg has been offset by efficiencies and savings in other departments. And this slide provides the information regarding the increases associated with the budget to 2021. There is one report from these program areas that will be before the Budget Committee, and it is a request to defer the report that Council had requested regarding implementation of a tax levy specifically for climate change initiatives. And the request in that report is to defer it until 2021. Moving on to the capital budget. Of the overall $81 million capital budget, the budget for these program areas is rather small at 2% or $1.9 million, but it does include some very key projects from a strategic perspective. So working from the left to the right in this chart under livability, there is the Brentwood School demolition and site servicing of approximately $700,000. Under engaged community, the web services of approximately $500,000 relates to that web refresh and the staff associated with that work. Diversity and inclusion includes the work and development of the plan and the ongoing work in this area. As I said earlier, there will be a report coming to Council in January outlining the progress thus far, as well as next steps and a timeline for completion of this plan. Under accountable government, there is $150,000 shown for strategic development. That is really relates to the foundational technology for online services. The support for facilities review is $60,000. And the Salesforce upgrade for the CRM, the client relationship management system, is a move to upgrade the current system with improvements providing greater flexibility and future expansion, an improved intake experience to streamline the customer experience, and providing modernization of the portal with self-serve features. Biodiversity, under the environment column, relates to the maintenance and enhancement of the town's natural assets. And this work of $100,000 would include the inventory of natural assets, fulfillment of federal, provincial, and local directives, and prioritization of restoration sites. And lastly is $100,000, which was funding that was approved by Council or conditionally on approval of the budget to support the ongoing implementation of the Community Energy Office. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the presentations. We appreciate all of that information. Now, members of committee and council that are here today, if you've got some questions, if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand, we can go along. If there aren't, I recognize that you haven't had time to look at the budget book. And so if we need to come back to this material on Thursday, we will. And so Don't feel you need to rush ahead today if you're uncomfortable because you haven't had a chance to read through all the material. And so I'll take your direction either way. While you're getting your head around that, I just want to let you know that we have done some pre-budget consultations with a couple of groups. I have met with the Community Leader Roundtable group, which is the Residents Association leaders from around town. They saw materials largely from last year and our directions for this year. The sense I think that we received from them was general comfort with the general directions that we were going to take. Similarly, I met with members of the Chamber of Commerce, Government Relations and Board Group, and provided them the same material that I provided to the Residents Association groups. I would say that similarly, they were comfortable with the general directions that we were heading in, and they continue to be interested in digital transformations and mobility issues as top of mind issues for the Chamber. I am going to be meeting with a group of sports user groups later this evening and to speak with them about their concerns as they've experienced them through the pandemic. And so that's some of the consultation that we've been working on behind the scenes. We are going to be trying a virtual open house this year as part of our engagement work this year, and so we'll see how that goes. But so far, the Zoom versions of our consultations seem to be going okay. So any questions or feedback? Councillor Dudek?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Just in terms of reaching out to various groups, I've noticed just from a cursory review of some of the rates and fees, there's a considerable increase in new fees being allocated towards the boating harbor area. And I guess my concern is that we're reaching out to advise them in advance the rationale behind these fees, and so they won't be caught. And I appreciate the fact everything's public, but when there's that big an amount of new fees associated, my concern is I'd rather hear about it now rather than later.
Excellent question. I have Chris Mark on the line, and I understand that they have been in discussions with the Harbor Group. Perhaps if Chris is able to come online and let us know where they've been at on that discussion. There was a member of the Harbor Group at the Community Leader Roundtable, I believe, as well. But that particular point did not come up in that discussion. Chris?
I've had a couple of discussions already with the AOHS, and we are currently reaching out to all of the harbor tenants and sending them information related to rates and fees. So we are doing that presently. I think a number of fees that are identified in the book are related to the Bronte Outer Harbor and are new to our rates and fees schedule. So that may be part of the reason that you're seeing a fair number of new rates. Mr. Chairman, everything else was increased just about at 1.7%, but I will clarify that and get back to you.
Appreciate that, Mr. Mark. That's great.
Anything else, Councillor Dudek? Any others? And I'm sure on this particular point around the harbors, we'll be discussing this on Thursday further, I'm sure. Councillor Robertson, was that a hand wave I saw or not? No? Okay. Councillor China.
I'm sorry, this might be a really silly question, but in one of the slides it noted electric ice resurfacers. Is that electric Zambonis? Is that part of the, I just wasn't sure what that meant. Are they electric or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's exactly what they are. They have been piloted in other areas such as Guelph and Caledon, and we have heard very good feedback on operating impacts. So we thought this would be a great time, since we were already going to be looking at replacing, that we would start to do it with electric versions. So we're really excited about this initiative.
Thank you, Colleen. Sorry about that. Didn't understand. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Bell. Any others? Okay, I don't see any other questions online here. So thank you very much for the staff presentations. We appreciate the information. We are going to be coming back for further discussions on Thursday, where we'll be going through the other commissions and coming back to any other questions that might come to you based on the overview material that you saw. So I'm going to take two motions then from the committee today. First is on the first item is the 2021 operating and capital budget overview. But before I do that, I just want to double check with the clerk that there are no members of the public who have indicated an interest in providing any information to us at the committee today. Is that correct?
That is correct. There are no members of the public registered to delegate.
Great, thank you very much. So I need a motion then from the committee that the overview presentation from the Manager of Financial Planning and Policy on the 2021 operating and capital budgets be received. And two, that the CAO office's presentation from the Director of Economic Development and Corporate Strategy on the 2021 budget be received. So thank you, Councillor Dudek has moved it. Are any opposed? See none, then that's carried. Thank you. And then on the second one, the 2021 rates and fees, I'm going to look for a motion to refer this item to the December 15th budget meeting so that the rates and fees can be considered as part of the overall budget. Councillor Sandu, is that your motion? Thank you very much. Any opposed to that issue? That's carried then. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time and attention on these items. There are no confidential discussion items. And so we're going to adjourn this meeting, and we will see you then on Thursday. And just to confirm, that's Thursday, the 19th of November at 9:30 in the morning. Welcome back, everyone, when we see you then, okay? Enjoy your day.
Before we adjourn, can I just make a quick announcement?
Yes, Councillor.
I just wanted to wish my son a very happy first birthday.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thanks so much.
Enjoy
Bye,
the
everyone.
day. Have a good birthday cake.
I will. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.